Andreas Antonopoulos is a best-selling author, speaker, educator, and highly sought-after expert in Bitcoin and open blockchain technologies. He's known for making complex subjects easy to understand and highlighting both the positive and negative impacts these technologies can have on our global societies. Andreas has been a repeat guest on the Joe Rogan Experience and the London Reel. He's also been interviewed by Bloomberg, CNN, CNBC, CBS, and so on. He has also appeared as an expert witness in legal cases and regulatory hearings around the world, including the Australian Senate Banking Committee and the Canadian Senate Commerce, Banking and Finance Committee. So please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Andreas Antonopoulos. I had a beautiful sit-down conversation with Andreas. Limited time, but geez, what a smart guy. What a wonderful host. We talked about Bitcoin and mass adoption and all sorts of things. Hang around and watch the video. Do yourself a favor, or do me a favor first. Hit the like and subscribe button, guys. Now hang around right to the end. I've got a giveaway in relation to Andreas Antonopoulos. So here we go. Here's the interview with Andreas. Enjoy. Okay, Andreas, we'll kick off with a couple of questions. So for someone that's just discovering that magic internet money, are they too late in your opinion? If not, why?
Oh, nowhere near too late. It depends how you look at this, but if you look at it as the broader space of the Internet of Money or Internet-connected commerce and open finance based on cryptocurrencies and blockchains, I think we're on a very similar trajectory to the Internet. We're now at the stage where it's still an obscure fascination by hobbyists. Most people have heard of it. They don't see the value or interest in their personal lives, which is very similar in my recollection to where we were in the very early 90s. Unlike the Internet, however, we have had all of these waves of early adopters because of price speculation and bubbles. Which kind of makes that timeline a bit weirder. But in terms of number of users, yeah, we're barely in the foothills. I think there are fewer than 50 million cryptocurrency users worldwide. So that's 1%, not even 1% of the human population.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. Early adopters still. So a lot of people don't have issues with money and banking day to day, okay, because as you've said, it works well until it doesn't work. Now, what do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say there are a lot. I would say there are a few. I think it's fewer than 2 billion people that don't have or are unlikely to have problems with banking and currency day to day. According to a variety of international organizations, more than half of the human population lives under dictatorships and totalitarian governments. So that means that money for them is also a means that the government used to control and surveil and oppress dissent. So it's a political tool as well. But so even if you have a bank account, that doesn't mean you really have the essence of free and open money that you could use. To the people who currently feel that they already have what they need, bully to you, fantastic. That's great. The question is, are we okay with leaving several billion people outside the world economy, leaving them to the mercy of dictators? And I'm personally not okay with that. And I think this technology, sooner or later, will result in a worldwide open economic system of finance that everyone can access. It's simply a matter of time. There's no question in my mind as to whether the future of the world is a system of restricted finance based on a hierarchy of power that advantages a few people very, very strongly, versus an open system of finance that's based on the same internet technologies that has given us the open internet of communication. So in my mind, there's no question about where we're going. The only question is how soon can we get there and how many people can.
Certainly some valid and good points here, that's for sure. Now, what's the importance of Bitcoin in society as you see it, Andreas?
Well, at the moment, it's relatively marginal. I mean, I think for the most part, the importance of Bitcoin in society today is to act as an early prototype and example of what is possible. And as such, ironically, some of the biggest scare stories about Bitcoin end up building that reputation. First of all, every time people hear that Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin's died, the CEO was arrested in Japan, and all of this bullshit that you hear on the media.
We've heard it a few times,
what it does, yeah, exactly. And what it does is the next time they hear that again, and the next time they hear it again, and they hear that, oh, it's still around. Well, you know, these news sources that I was trusting to give me an opinion about this have repeatedly told me that it's dead, and yet it isn't. So that creates a bit of doubt, right? So its survivability in itself is the story. Its ability to resist even when many and powerful governments are against it and many and powerful corporations are against it is the story. And so its role today in society as the earliest example of an open public cryptocurrency based on internet protocols is to take a lot of the heat and a lot of the flack. And simply survive. And it's doing so pretty well, I think.
It's doing great. Yeah, I've lost count of how many times I've heard Bitcoin's died. So, okay, look, I find there's still very much a negative stigma attached to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in the wider community. Why do you think that is the case, and what has to be done in order for mass adoption, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think some of it is simply fear of change. So it's natural to be afraid of new things, and especially things that are vastly different from what you're used to before. And part of that we've already seen. So I remember very clearly in the early days of the internet. So I was involved in the internet in 1990. I first got on in 1989, very, very early days. Most people didn't hear about it, didn't know what it was. And I remember in the early 90s, the media coverage of the internet. It was a lawless frontier of crooks, pornographers, and terrorists who were going to invade your living room. You know, pretty much the same things they said about television before that, and, you know, in every iteration of technology, you get that scaremongering, fear-mongering that happens at the beginning, which is a natural outcome of people being afraid of change. Then, in the case of Bitcoin, there's also some rather deliberate propaganda, and that propaganda comes from parties that want to emphasize the negative stories because Bitcoin represents a fundamental threat to their hold of power over the existing financial system. So if in a hierarchical system you're positioned near the top of the pyramid and you have all of these money flows that effectively go through your organization or institution, and those money flows allow you not only to extract a small rent, parasitically suck on that flow of money and extract small rents, but also, when I say small, we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars, but also apply power, political power, not only with that money, but on that money. Control who can and can't participate, who can and can't receive money, use it as a tool for geopolitics or for internal politics, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, when you introduce a system that removes that center of power and removes intermediaries who can act in that way, that obviously threatens some very, very powerful interests in the world. And they have it in their interest, obviously, to spread more of the disinformation. At the end of the day, it also creates great clicks. You know, this is, it's not as interesting to post stories about the impact of decentralization in modern societies, the ability to scale finance to include more people who you've never heard of in places you've never heard of. Whereas, the scare stories around what happens where we're not in control. That's ultimately the message. The message is money is safe because we are in control. And by we, I mean the people who are in control, the banks, the governments, etc. And by definition, therefore, if they are not in control anymore, money isn't safe. And that's the scare story. Most of the scare stories are those about, we need these people to control the money, because otherwise, if everyone could just send money and receive money anywhere, we'd have chaos. If the economy wasn't controlled, if money isn't backed by government action and controlled carefully, if the economy isn't steered by these very serious people, then it all descends into chaos. Of course, historically, it's bullshit. I mean, that simply isn't the case. And we know that not only have we had open, transferable, peer-to-peer money in the form of precious metal coins for thousands of years, but those were some of the very, very positive years of economic development, civilizational development, and also, historically, when governments try to steer economies and concentrate decision making, it ends badly. So I think that's why we see all of these scare stories being promoted.
I totally agree. And what about the part of the mass adoption? What do you think? Where do you think we need to be at with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies to onboard those? I guess the older people and make it easier and so forth.
Well, so mass adoption has different meanings to different people. As far as I'm concerned, having a bunch of people in Western countries being able to buy their coffee at Starbucks using Bitcoin isn't really meaningful. It doesn't change anything. So if we measure mass adoption based on the use by those who already have economic inclusion in the same way that they previously used other traditional forms of money, that is pretty much the same as in the 90s when they tried to measure the internet based on the number of fax machines that are replaced. And the idea was, who has open, direct communications today? People who have fax machines, businesses, etc. If businesses aren't using the internet to replace fax machines, then the internet is meaningless. Of course, the real power of the internet doesn't come from replacing fax machines. First of all, it comes from giving access to communications infrastructure to people who never had it before. It means, the ability of a student in a small rural school to be able to look up information on Wikipedia and or YouTube and teach themselves a skill, a craft, or profession. It comes from the ability of dissidents in countries where they're being oppressed to be able to communicate the truth, as happens all the time on the internet. And you can't measure that in terms of fax machines we've replaced. So to measure mainstream adoption of cryptocurrency as how many people who already had access to a bank account can use cryptocurrency in the same way that they use their bank account doesn't really mean anything. What's more interesting is how many people now have access to financial services and tools that they didn't have before, that they can use to either seek investment, earn a living, or make investments into things that they were previously prohibited from doing, or evade the kind of oppressive controls over currency and sometimes failing currency that the government is trying to impose on them, or use it to fund a different political and future for their own country, or a different circumstance for their family. And that you can't really measure using the traditional things. We have to think about this as a very, very long development. This is not going to, for people in California who are playing with technology, it's a fast-paced, fast-moving space with lots of jobs and startups and things like that. But that's not really the real development of this technology. What's happening at a much slower pace, but is equally, if not much more meaningful, is the fact that in many developing countries, people are now seeing an opportunity to use a new technology to change the balance of power in finance. And that is going to take a longer time, but it's ultimately going to have the greatest impact in society.
Right. Well, I mean, one of my first videos about what is Bitcoin, a big part of that video was banking the unbanked, and those countries in developing worlds currently not having the access to that. So I think that's what you're getting on is
well, yes, but it's not just the unbanked, because of course the unbanked are kind of the last step of this development, because in order to reach the unbanked, you have to build infrastructure and make systems that are very, very accessible, very, very inexpensive. So if today it takes a $100 smartphone, an internet connection with a data service, with a fairly robust data service, literacy, numeracy, and financial education to join the cryptocurrency space, then you're not banking any unbanked with that. We have to accept that. That's fine. Just like, the early cell phones were carried by CEOs and business people, but the ultimate destination is similar to how the internet has developed. Very, very low cost devices, very, very low cost access to data that reaches very, very far, even into remote areas. So how do we do that with cryptocurrency? So for now, it's not really about the unbanked as much as it is about the underbanked. The unbanked are the final destination, of course, but in order to get there, we have to first find these little hotspots where the currency is in crisis, where banking isn't working, where financial inclusion is very low, but you still have good infrastructure, high levels of literacy and numeracy, and prolific use of smartphones. So I think it's much more the Philippines, Brazil, and India than it is sub-Saharan Africa, at least for the next decade. But as the technology gets cheaper, we will get there.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching that all the way to the end, and I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sitting down with Andreas and producing it. Now, we got a giveaway, okay? Today, I'm giving away one of Andreas's books, and before it is any FUD, no, Andreas didn't ask me to even talk about his book. I think this is a fantastic book, The Internet of Money, Volume 2, obviously other volumes as well. The thing I love about this book, and look, you might just think, oh, it's just a book, it's a giveaway. Well, sorry guys, there's some people that can't even afford a book, okay? You can get these on Amazon, link in the description, but I'm going to give this away. Go to my Twitter account, okay? I'll put my Twitter details there on the screen. Go to Twitter and follow the pinned tweet to see how you can win this. This isn't my book, don't worry, I haven't read it, okay? I've actually got my own copy of this. Now, the great thing about this book, I found, is it's a great look. We're all busy, okay? Everyone's busy, but this is split up into small stories, short paragraphs, and it's a coffee table book. You can get down to it, you can read a paragraph, or you can come back to it later at night when you have time. So it's wonderful. So look, thanks again, guys. Thank you for your support. And if you did enjoy the whole video, please leave a like, please leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next video.